On today's episode of Poland Daily Culture, we are going to give you an insight into a foreign perspective living in Poland. We will be exploring their experiences and how they have absorbed certain aspects of the culture.
How do you think Poland is now perceived? If you have some sort of idea of how Poland is perceived from the outside, I know you're very much you're within the country. It can be difficult now to judge how it's perceived. But how would you say it is viewed upon, perhaps in Britain or elsewhere?
I think the best way I can answer this is to say that I find through my network, which is a real estate network, I find increasingly a lot of people reaching out to me, contacting me, saying, "Hey, listen, you've been in Poland for a long time. Whether we're looking to invest there, or we're looking, or friends who want to come here, and it's now firmly on the sort of the tourist route as well. Whereas historically, when anyone thought of coming to anywhere in Central Europe, they would only think of Prague and Budapest in that order, at a push Krakow. But I think now, certainly about 3 or 4 of the Polish cities are definitely on the the sort of hotspots in terms of tourism now, and I think increasingly, because say, through my social networking group, people know I'm here for a long time, and they reach out and they are saying to me, "Listen, we've heard that this city's great, or there's a lot of culture in, be it Gdańsk, Krakow, Wrocław. We're coming to Poland. Give some tips." So I think in terms of Poland's perception on an international standing, I think it is really improved, and particularly in the last few years as well.
And outside of Europe, do you think there is still some sort of misconceptions? Or?
I think there can be. I work in real estate, and we see a lot of Asian investors coming into the market now, and some of the early questions we have had to answer before they make the trip to Poland has been sort of, it seems to be a massive misconception about the level of development in Poland. And I think when they get off the plane, we spend a couple of days with them and we show them around the cities, they are incredibly surprised. And I think they see, to be honest, no difference between Warsaw, Krakow, the major cities, and Western European cities. So I think that is the overriding response we get, is that once people from outside of Europe have actually travelled here, they are very, very pleasantly surprised at how developed it is.
Right here, we're in a Polish restaurant, so I think it's only appropriate that we sort of include a question about the food. Can you tell us maybe what's the first thing you think of when you think of Polish food?
The first thing I think of is gołąbki.
Yeah. In a positive light?
In some places, in a positive light. In some restaurants, in a positive light. When it's done well, it can be. I'm a big fan of pierogi ruski, and not much to my detriment, because I probably eat too much of it, and it certainly helped add on a few pounds over the years. But I think obviously it can be quite a heavy diet, quite a meat-based diet. But I think I've grown to love it. When I first came, I did struggle. I struggled. I was never a big lover of kapusta. I wasn't a big lover of mushrooms and onions, and obviously they're in every single Polish dish. So, but over time, it's I think the level of Polish cuisine has really, really, and I think in the level of restaurants in Warsaw, Krakow, again, the big cities is really sort of on a par with anywhere in the world. I think there was a report recently out in the Times that highlighted that fact that Warsaw is one of the culinary destinations in Europe right now.
Now, I've done this slightly in reverse order because I think it's the most sort of typical question, but I think it is probably the question which tends to intrigue Poles the most. So what is it that kind of brought you to Poland in the first place?
I was sent here by my company, and but and I think after I landed in September, so I had a Polish winter. Back in 2006, when there were still proper winters. Yeah. But I think within 6 months, I fell in love with the country. I fell in love with Warsaw in particular. Is it specifically? It's hard to put your finger on. I think there is so much to it, and I would argue it's sort of how open the people were. For me as a foreigner being here, and quite often you'd get the question like, why are you here? What are you, after a couple of years, it was like, why are you still here? Yeah. And I think, that was the question I would get asked from my Polish friends, but also from outside. There is no one thing that I can say, but I would argue probably these points. I think, how many friends I made in a very short space of time. Coming from a city like London, I've watched people from different parts of Europe come to London and find it difficult to sort of get into friendship groups and, break into networks of people. They have to sort of spend their time with, people from other parts of Europe as well, and they form sort of like an expat community in London. Whereas here, I was able to find various different groups, be they sort of my Polish friends from rugby, my Polish friends from partying, my Polish friends from work, and at the same time have an expat community that I could fall back on as well. So I think that was one of the major things that I sort of, was how open this society really is. And secondly, I think it's the quality of life thing, and I can't stress that enough. It's the one thing that people from outside don't really understand, that how green this city is. It's I think it's the greenest capital in Europe. I think it's, how quick and easy it is now, especially with the infrastructure improvements, to get everywhere, be it to other Polish cities or to the surroundings of Warsaw, which are quite beautiful as well. So I think there's a huge amount of activities to do, which on the face of it, when you first come here, you probably don't really truly understand, but after a while, you really feel it. So.
Fantastic. Yeah. Okay, Sean, thank you very much for joining us at Poland Daily Culture.
Okay.
In today's episode, we are filming at the beautiful restaurant Dom Polski on Belwederska in Warsaw, and I will be discussing the matter of living in Poland with Jon. Jon, hello.
Hello,
and welcome.
Paula.
How does it feel being a guest, not a host?
Feels a little bit odd, I've got to say, but I'm just going to feel my way into the role, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, so since we're at a beautiful restaurant, as I mentioned already, let's maybe start with the topic of food, Polish food. So do you have a favorite dish that you could recommend to other people watching us?
Well, I like, when I go to the mountains, I love a bit of placki ziemniaki with the goulash on top. Sort of hearty mountain style food, but generally I eat Polish food every day. It's just it's completely become part of my lifestyle. I think I don't even really think about it so much anymore. It's a very sort of natural thing to. Typically, Polish food is that sort of meat, potatoes, veg. I like that sort of thing. It ticks the boxes. I like the everyday food. Big fan of the soups. Although I have to say, Polish Christmas,
It's overwhelming.
Yeah, and not such a fan of carp, I have to say. Not a big fan of carp, bit too muddy for my taste.
I've been hearing this from many people from abroad. My father even told me when he moved from Canada to Poland and my grandmother told him to prepare the carp, he was very shocked.
Yeah, it seems odd to me that this is the finale for the year. Here it comes. It's a carp. Don't mean to knock the culture tradition of it, but my understanding of it anyway is carp is not even home to is not naturally from Poland anyway. They kind of imported it from China or something, and somehow it's kind of built up over time and has just become part of Polish Christmas tradition. So if I could reverse that, cut that out and keep all the rest. Have the other sort of 11 dishes, which are all very nice.
True, I agree. And so you've lived in England, in London, and so why did you move to Poland? What made you decide to move here?
Well, it's not such a sort of romantic tale, to be honest. You speak to most people, expats living in Poland, it's usually, I fell in love with a beautiful Polish woman. It's the typical story, but no, I was kind of sick of my job in England, and I happened to have one friend, my only friend living abroad, was here in Warsaw, and as I complained to him about hating my job, he just said to me, well, don't worry, the jobs are plentiful in Warsaw, I'll hook you up. I'd visited once Warsaw, and I'd liked it. I liked it a lot. He showed me the sort of the parts of it which I might enjoy. I'm quite into sort of music and nightlife, especially sort of 10 years ago. And so he showed me that, and I thought, well, great, I could make a go of things here. So I jumped into it, and to be honest, it never felt sort of particularly strange at any point. I never felt kind of alien or something like that. There's something about Poland which is...
So you feel like it's quite welcoming for foreigners?
Definitely is. There's a kind of... the thing about Poland is it takes perhaps a little while longer to build up a friendship than some other countries. But what you'll find is that it's a very sort of authentic friendship that you build up with Polish people. It's something more meaningful and longer lasting than perhaps you go somewhere else, and they might be super friendly somewhere, and you feel like you're immediately part of it, but then will it last over time? When I'm here, I feel like people, you know, they're willing to go the extra mile for you once you've become friends or family in some case.